You ever notice how some days you feel like you're in total control focused, sharp, seeing patterns everywhere, and other days it feels like the world is just noise? I'm Jim Simons, and trust me, even in a life full of data, algorithms, probability, and the occasional downright chaos, difference between those two kinds of days usually comes down to a handful of things I try to work on every single day. And if you stick with me for the next few minutes, you're going to understand exactly what those things are and why they matter far beyond investing. You ever notice how most people stop learning the moment something feels familiar? They think they already know enough, and from that point on, life becomes a loop, same thoughts, same limits, same results. But the people who change the world, the ones who consistently outperform, they operate differently. They stay hungry, they stay open, they stay curious. Curiosity isn't just a habit, it's a daily ignition switch. It's the spark that turns an ordinary mind into a discovery engine. And if you want to live with edge, confidence, and real insight, you have to wake up every day with that childlike urge to explore, to question, to peel back layers no one else even knows exist. Think about it. Every breakthrough you've ever admired came from someone who refused to settle for the first explanation. When something didn't make sense, they pulled the thread, they dug deeper. They asked, what else is hiding here? That's the mindset I'm talking about. Because the truth is, the world doesn't reward the person who memorizes answers, it rewards the person who asks better questions. Better questions lead to better understanding, and better understanding leads to better decisions. And in a world full of noise and distractions, the ability to ask the right questions is a superpower. Curiosity is also the antidote to fear. When people encounter something new, they usually tense up, they avoid it, label it too complicated, retreat to what's comfortable. But when you approach the unknown with curiosity instead of fear, everything changes. Suddenly, the unfamiliar becomes an opportunity. The challenge becomes a puzzle. And puzzles are fun. Problems shrink when you're curious about them. Instead of thinking, oh no, what if I fail? You start thinking, I wonder how this works. That shift alone can move you from hesitation to action, from doubt to experimentation, from stagnation to growth. And curiosity doesn't require genius. It's not about having a massive IQ or some special gift. It's about paying attention. It's about noticing what most people ignore. It's about following a thread of interest even if it seems small, random, or unrelated. Some of my biggest insights came from ideas that looked worthless at first glance. But curiosity doesn't judge ideas, it explores them. Curiosity says, let's just see where this goes. And that simple decision, the decision to explore, often leads to connections that change everything. The funny thing is, the more curious you become, the more the world reveals itself to you. Patterns appear. Relationships between ideas start to form naturally. You stop living on the surface and start experiencing depth. Instead of scrolling mindlessly, you're observing. Instead of assuming, you're investigating. Instead of jumping to conclusions, you're peeling back layers. And every time you do that, your mental world expands. You grow, and growth doesn't happen in big dramatic leaps. It's built from these daily sparks of curiosity that push your awareness outward, one question at a time. Curiosity also protects you from becoming outdated. The world evolves fast: technology, markets, trends, opportunities. People who stop learning get left behind. People who stay curious adapt effortlessly. They don't just follow the wave, they spot it early. They ride it before anyone else notices it forming. Curiosity keeps you relevant. It keeps you sharp. It keeps you moving. And maybe the most important thing, curiosity makes life richer. When you're curious, conversations become more interesting. People become more interesting. Everyday experiences become gateways to understanding. You stop sleepwalking through your own life. You start engaging. You start feeling alive. Curiosity makes the ordinary extraordinary, because even the simplest things have stories hidden inside them if you take a moment to look. So when you wake up tomorrow, don't just open your eyes, activate them. Don't just move through your day, investigate it. Ask questions. Notice details. Explore ideas that others overlook. Because the moment you stop being curious is the moment you stop evolving. And the people who never stop evolving, they're the ones who end up seeing what others can't, doing what others won't, and achieving what others think is impossible. You ever notice how the world tries to rush you into everything? Decisions, goals, success, results. Everyone wants everything fast. But Here's the truth most people never learn. Anything truly meaningful takes time, and the people who win big are the ones who learn how to work with time instead of fighting against it. Patience isn't about waiting around or moving slowly. It's about understanding the rhythm of life, the rhythm of opportunities, and knowing that forcing things before they're ready is the fastest way to ruin something that could have become extraordinary. When you really understand patience, you stop chasing shortcuts and start building things that last. Most people fail not because they lack talent or ambition, but because they quit too early. They plant seeds and walk away before the roots even have a chance to form. They expect instant results, instant clarity, instant progress. And the moment things get tough or confusing, they abandon the process and look for something easier. But the people who master patience, they stay long enough for the seeds to become roots and the roots to become something unshakable. They stay long enough to see the invisible work start paying off. Patience is what gives your efforts time to compound, and compounding is where the magic happens. The irony is that patience isn't passive at all. It's not sitting on your hands. It's the opposite. It's active, deliberate, steady engagement. It's making choices today that won't pay off today, but will pay off massively if you stick with them. It's doing the work without demanding immediate validation. It's trusting the process even on the days when the process looks like it isn't working. Because those are the days that filter out the people who only wanted easy wins from the ones who are truly committed. Patience also has this incredible ability to sharpen your decision-making. When you're impatient, everything feels urgent, and urgency clouds your judgment. You grab the first option, the loudest option, the easiest option, even if it's the wrong one. But when you're patient, you give yourself the space to think clearly. You wait for more information. You allow the noise to settle. Suddenly, the right path becomes obvious, not because it magically appeared, but because you were calm enough to recognize it. Patience is clarity. It slows the world down just enough for you to make decisions you won't regret later. And let's talk about setbacks. When you're patient, setbacks don't break you. They educate you. They refine you. They push you to adjust instead of abandon. Most people panic when things don't go according to plan. But someone with patience just thinks, all right, the timeline changed. Not a big deal. That mindset alone puts you miles ahead of everyone who collapses at the first sign of resistance. With patience, pressure turns into learning, problems turn into puzzles, delays turn into opportunities to strengthen your strategy. Patience is also a serious advantage in a world addicted to speed. When everyone else is making quick, emotional moves, the patient person becomes the one who actually sees the whole board. Markets reward patience. Creativity rewards patience. Relationships reward patience. Growth rewards patience. Almost everything collapses under impatience except regret, which grows faster than anything else when you rush decisions. Another incredible thing about patience is how it builds inner calm. When you're not constantly demanding instant results, your mind relaxes, you think better, you listen better, you connect dots you couldn't see before. You stop comparing yourself to others because you understand that everyone's timeline is different. You stop panicking about being behind because you know that real growth happens beneath the surface long before it shows on the outside. Patience removes anxiety from the process and replaces it with confidence. And maybe the most underrated part of patience is how it helps you enjoy the journey. When you're not racing through life trying to fast forward to some distant finish line, you actually start absorbing the experiences, the lessons, the small wins, the people around you. You start living instead of sprinting. You realize that the process isn't something to endure, it's something to appreciate. Because everything you're working toward will eventually arrive, but the person you're becoming during the wait, that where the real transformation happens, most people lose to themselves long before they ever lose to the world. They don't fail because the goal was impossible or the path was unclear. They fail because they couldn't stay consistent when it mattered, couldn't control their impulses, couldn't stick to the plan when emotions started screaming louder than logic. Discipline is the quiet force that separates every dreamer from every achiever. And it's not loud, it's not glamorous, it's not something you show off. Discipline is internal, silent, uncomfortable. But it's the single sharpest advantage you can build. Because once you learn to govern yourself, nothing outside you can derail you. Discipline isn't about punishing yourself or living some rigid, joyless life. It's about giving your future self the respect it deserves. Most people live only for the moment. They eat what feels good now, spend what feels good now, lash out when emotions hit, quit when things get hard. Discipline lets you zoom out. It lets you say, I know what I want a year from now, and I'm not going to sabotage it for 10 seconds of comfort. That one mindset shift can change the entire trajectory of your life, because every disciplined choice compounds. Every disciplined morning builds the next one. And every time you follow your plan instead of your mood, you strengthen a part of yourself that nothing and no one can take away. There's a reason discipline beats intelligence, talent, and luck in the long run. All three of those fluctuate. Discipline doesn't. It's your anchor on the days you wake up tired. It's your fuel when motivation disappears. It's your shield when chaos hits. You can't control the economy, the market, the people around you, or the curveballs life throws, but you can control the actions you take today. And that tiny strip of control, that tiny slice of choice, is where discipline lives. That's the part that determines whether you drift through life or drive your life. What most people don't realize is that discipline isn't built in big heroic moments. It's built in small, boring decisions no one sees. Waking up on time, finishing what you started, sticking to your routine when it's easier to break it, saying no when every fiber of you wants to say yes. These moments might feel insignificant in isolation, but when you add them up, they form the foundation of a stronger, sharper, more resilient version of you. And over time, that version of you becomes unstoppable. The tricky part is your emotions will always try to negotiate with you. Discipline doesn't negotiate. Your emotions will say, just skip today, one day won't hurt. Discipline says one skip day becomes a habit. Your emotions say, you're tired, you deserve a break. Discipline says, you'll be tired tomorrow too, do it anyway. Your emotions will always choose comfort. Discipline always chooses progress. The same way a muscle grows under resistance, discipline grows every time you push back against the easy choice. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. You will not always feel like doing the thing you need to do. And that's okay. You're not supposed to feel like it. If every good decision felt good, discipline wouldn't even be a concept. The real growth happens when you act without needing the emotional permission slip. When you move anyway, when you follow your principles instead of your impulses. That's the difference between someone who hopes for success and someone who engineers it. Discipline also frees you. People think discipline is restrictive, but the lack of discipline is what traps you. Traps you in unhealthy habits, unstable emotions, financial stress, unfinished goals. Discipline is what creates space, mental space, emotional space, space to think clearly and act intentionally instead of reacting like a puppet, pulled by whatever feeling hits you next. When you're disciplined, you stop living on autopilot and start living with purpose. And the beauty of discipline is that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent enough that your standards rise and your excuses weaken. You just have to choose long-term over short-term a little more often than you used to. And once you start holding yourself to a higher standard, something powerful happens. Your self-respect grows. And that self-respect makes discipline easier because you begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who doesn't quit, someone who doesn't break promises to themselves. And when that identity locks in, discipline stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like a natural part of who you are. You ever notice how the world keeps getting louder and faster? Like everything is designed to pull your attention in 1,000 directions at once. Notifications buzzing, people calling, tasks piling up, distractions popping out of nowhere. And in the middle of all that chaos, there's this rare, almost sacred state that most people barely experience anymore, the state of real, deep focus, the kind of focus where your mind sharpens the noise phase and suddenly you're operating on a different level. That's the place where ideas come alive, where clarity shows up, where real progress is made. And if you want to accomplish anything meaningful, anything at all, you have to learn how to protect that state like your life depends on it. Focus isn't just about paying attention to something. It's about blocking out everything else. It's about choosing what matters and refusing to let the unimportant take over your mind. Most people don't lose because they're not capable. They lose because they're distracted. They scatter their attention across 100 little things and never go deep enough into any one thing to truly move the needle. But the moment you learn how to lock in, how to give your full mind to one task, one idea, one challenge, everything changes. You stop being busy and you start being effective. You stop drowning in noise and start navigating with intention. When you go deep, time behaves differently. You've felt it before, those moments when you're so immersed in what you're doing that you forget to check your phone, forget the world for a little while, and suddenly an hour feels like 5 minutes. That's flow. That's the zone. That's the mind's highest performance mode. And the crazy part, most people never get there because they allow their attention to be hijacked before their mind even has the chance to settle in. It takes about 20 minutes for the brain to transition into real focus, but it takes only one ping, one interruption, one little distraction to knock you right back out of it. So building focus isn't just about working harder. It's about eliminating the leaks that drain your mental energy before you even begin. Focus is also a form of respect. Respect for your time, your goals, your potential. When you allow distractions to control you, you're basically letting the world decide what you do with your mind. But when you decide that your focus is valuable, you naturally start filtering your environment. You start protecting your attention the same way you'd protect anything precious. You silence what needs to be silenced. You say no to what needs to be rejected. You choose depth over noise, progress over stimulation, long-term over short-lived, and over time, that choice compounds into something powerful. And let's be honest, focus doesn't come naturally anymore. We've been trained to crave stimulation, to expect constant novelty. Our brains have been rewired by endless scrolling, flickering screens, and the addictive pull of rapid switching. So when you try to sit down and do something meaningful, it feels uncomfortable at first. Your mind tries to escape. You feel restless. You want to check something, anything. That discomfort is the withdrawal of a distracted mind. But if you push through it, if you sit with that tension instead of giving into it, your brain slowly relearns how to concentrate. And once it remembers, once you get that agility back, you feel like you're regaining control of your inner world. Focus is also where insights hide. You won't find breakthroughs in scattered thinking. You won't solve big problems with a shallow mind. You have to give your brain the quiet and depth it needs to make connections, to analyze, to create. When you concentrate deeply, your subconscious starts participating. Ideas that were blurry suddenly become sharp. Solutions that were impossible suddenly reveal themselves. Focus unlocks the part of your mind that only speaks when the noise has been silenced. And maybe the most important thing about focus is that it builds your identity. Every time you choose to concentrate, you're telling yourself you're the kind of person who follows through, who finishes what they start, who doesn't get pushed around by distractions. The identity becomes strength. It becomes momentum. It becomes confidence. And with enough of those focus days stacked together, you start seeing results that others call talent or luck, when in reality, it was simply discipline meeting attention. So the next time you sit down to work, don't just show up physically. Show up mentally. Give yourself the gift of full attention. Because in a world where everyone is distracted, the ability to focus isn't just an advantage, it's a superpower. You know, humility is one of those things people love to talk about, but rarely practice in real time, especially when they believe they've figured things out. The funny thing is, the moment you start thinking you're the smartest person in the room, life has a way of showing you otherwise. Markets don't care about your confidence, your degrees, your past victories, or how clever you think you are. They humble you instantly. Life does the same. And that's why humility isn't a weakness, it's a shield. It protects you from overconfidence, from blind spots, from stepping into traps you could have avoided if you had just paused for 1 second and said, maybe I don't know everything yet. Real humility isn't about putting yourself down or acting small. It's about acknowledging reality clearly. It's about understanding that no matter how much you've learned, there's always something you're missing. Whenever you walk into a room believing you already have all the answers, you stop listening, you stop observing, and you cut yourself off from the very insights that could push you forward. But when you walk in thinking, let me see what I can learn here, everything shifts. Suddenly, every conversation becomes an opportunity. Every disagreement becomes a new angle. Every challenge becomes a way to refine your thinking. You become flexible, open, receptive, and that's where real strength lies. Humility also sharpens your judgment. Think about the last time you made a bad decision. Chances are, a little voice inside you tried to warn you, but ego drowned it out. Ego whispers things like, I've got this, I already know, I don't need anyone's help. But humility whispers something completely different. Slow down. Look again. Ask more questions. Don't rush just to prove something. And when you listen to that quieter voice, you end up making smarter moves, not louder ones. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming humility makes you less competitive. It's the opposite. Humility actually makes you more dangerous in a good way. Because when you're humble, you're constantly improving. You absorb ideas from everywhere. You don't get stuck in rigid thinking. You don't cling to outdated beliefs just because they once worked. You adapt faster. You evolve faster. You grow without ego slowing you down. You become someone who can spot flaws in your own logic before the world does, and that's a massive advantage. And there's something else. Humility strengthens relationships. People trust you more when you're not trying to impress them every second. They open up when they sense you're not playing a role or pretending to know everything. When you can say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn, you create an environment where others feel safe to contribute their ideas too. That kind of atmosphere produces breakthroughs, whether you're leading a team, collaborating on a project, or building something from scratch. No great achievement happens alone, and humility is what allows great people to work together without ego getting in the way. Humility also keeps your mind quiet. Overconfidence creates noise, constant pressure to maintain an image, constant fear of being proven wrong, constant tension from pretending to be perfect. But when you approach things humbly, that weight disappears. You don't need to defend every point. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to be right all the time. You focus on truth, not validation, on progress, not pride. And that mental clarity frees up an incredible amount of creative energy. Most importantly, humility keeps you teachable. The moment you stop being teachable, you stop growing. And once you stop growing, you start falling behind without even realizing it. Humility keeps you connected to reality. It keeps you curious. It keeps you grounded enough to learn from mistakes, from people younger than you, from people older than you, from strangers, from competitors, even from critics. Sometimes your biggest insight comes from the person you least expect, but you'll only receive it if your ego steps aside long enough to listen. So every day, remind yourself that staying humble isn't about lowering your value. It's about raising your potential. It's about staying aware, staying open, staying honest with yourself, because humility doesn't make you smaller. It gives you the space to grow into something bigger than your ego could ever allow. You ever notice how some people treat intelligence like it's a solo performance, as if greatness happens in a quiet room with one genius and a notebook? It's a nice fantasy, but it's not how the real world works. If there's one thing I learned early and learned deeply, it's that surrounding yourself with brilliant people is like multiplying your own mind. You don't just get more ideas, you get better ones. Ideas sharpen when they collide, expand when they're challenged, and evolve when they're passed around a room full of sharp thinkers who see the world differently than you do. And when you start spending your days around people who are genuinely brilliant, something fascinating happens, your standards rise, your thinking rises, your entire life rises. Most people choose comfort over brilliance. They avoid people who might expose their blind spots. They gravitate toward those who nod politely, agree easily, and don't push back. But brilliance isn't polite. It questions you. It challenges you. It refuses to let weak thinking slide. And if you're serious about leveling up your life, you have to step into that environment willingly. You have to replace ego with curiosity and see every smart person around you as a doorway to something you haven't yet discovered. Because the truth is, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're not in a room that will help you grow. You're in a room that will keep you exactly where you are. And it's not just about intelligence. It's about diversity of intelligence. You want the mathematician who sees patterns no one else notices. You want the creative thinker who can turn chaos into beauty. You want the strategist who can see 10 moves ahead. You want the skeptic who spots flaws instantly. You want the optimist who pushes ideas forward. You want the one person in the room who always asks the question everyone else is too afraid or too distracted to ask. When you bring different kinds of brilliance together, ideas don't just improve, they transform. They become something no single mind could have built alone. And here's the part people underestimate. Being around brilliant people forces you to drop your laziness. You can't show up half-prepared. You can't throw out sloppy ideas. You can't rely on charm or improvisation. You're either contributing or you're getting left behind. That pressure, that accountability, that expectation is powerful. It makes you sharper. It pulls the best out of you. It keeps you operating at a level you wouldn't reach if you were working in isolation. You start reading more, thinking more, refining your ideas more, not because someone told you to, but because the environment demands it. That's how growth works. Pressure without hostility, challenge without ego, competition without envy. Another thing people get wrong is believing that brilliance is intimidating. It's not. What's intimidating is pretending you know everything and then getting exposed. But When you walk in with humility, when you openly admit what you don't know, that's when brilliant people welcome you. They respect curiosity. They respect hunger. They respect someone who listens with intention instead of pretending to understand. And the moment you let go of the need to look smart, you start becoming smarter. You start asking better questions. You start absorbing more. You start learning at a speed you didn't think was possible. And let me tell you something else. Brilliant people don't drain you. They energize you. They spark something in you. They trigger ideas you didn't know were inside you. A 10-minute conversation with the right person can solve problems you've been stuck on for months. It can shift your perspective in a single sentence. It can open doors you didn't know existed. That is the value of proximity. That is the value of choosing your circle intentionally rather than casually. Because your circle will either elevate you or suffocate you. It will either expand your thinking or shrink it. It will either give you speed or slow you down. And here's the final thing that makes surrounding yourself with brilliance so powerful. It changes what you believe is possible. When you watch people you respect take on challenges that seem insane, push beyond limit, that seem fixed, and achieve outcomes that seem improbable, something inside you shifts. You stop seeing ceilings. You stop accepting excuses. You stop underestimating what you can do. You start thinking in bigger dimensions. You start dreaming in bigger shapes. And sooner or later, almost without realizing it, you become one of those brilliant people for someone else. You know, people love to chase those big, dramatic moments, the overnight breakthrough, the sudden transformation, the massive leap from nothing to everything. But here's the truth most people never want to hear. The real power isn't in the leap, it's in the steps. The tiny, steady, almost invisible steps you take every single day. Consistency isn't glamorous. It doesn't give you fireworks, applause, or instant validation, but it builds something far more powerful than excitement. It builds results you can rely on. And if you really want to separate yourself from everyone who keeps starting and quitting, dreaming and doubting, planning and postponing, you have to make consistency your daily partner, even on the days it feels pointless. There's this illusion people carry around that motivation is what drives achievement. No, motivation is emotional caffeine. It spikes, it crashes, and it leaves you where you started. Consistency is different. It doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't ask whether today is convenient. It shows up with you or without you. And when you learn to show up no matter what, tired, bored, stressed, unsure, you unlock a level of progress most people never touch because they only work when the mood is right. But the mood is never consistently right. Life doesn't hand you perfect conditions. So when you learn to work through imperfect ones, you become unstoppable. People think consistency is about doing huge things every day. It's not. It's about doing small things without skipping. It's about writing a paragraph even when the chapter feels too big. It's about studying for 20 minutes even when you don't have 2 hours. It's about saving a little even when you can't save a lot. It's about training your mind to keep the chain intact, because once a chain of consistent action gets long enough, breaking it feels painful. And that's a powerful place to be when stopping feels worse than continuing. But consistency also requires brutal honesty. You have to know the difference between rest and avoidance, between recovery and procrastination, between taking a strategic pause and making excuses. The brain is clever. It will try to sell you comfort disguised as self-care. And sometimes, yes, you need real rest. But most of the time, you need to show up, because consistency isn't built on perfect days. It's built on imperfect effort, repeated again and again until it becomes your normal. The people who win long-term aren't the ones who go the hardest. They're the ones who refuse to disappear. Consistency also builds identity. Every repeated action tells your brain, this is who I am now. If you write every day, at some point you stop seeing yourself as someone trying to write, you become a writer. If you exercise daily, you stop forcing yourself to be disciplined. You become the kind of person who doesn't skip workouts. Identity makes effort easier. It transforms I should into I do. And once your mind makes that shift, consistency doesn't just become possible, it becomes natural. The beauty of consistency is that it compounds. You don't notice it at first. The progress is quiet, subtle, almost invisible. But then suddenly, something clicks. You wake up one day and realize you're better, stronger, sharper than you used to be. And it didn't come from one giant explosion of effort. It came from hundreds of tiny choices you barely remembered making. That's the magic of compounding. The small things stay small until one day they're not. And people will look at you and think it happened all at once, but you'll know the truth it happened because you refused to stop. And here's the thing, consistency protects you from the chaos of life. When things go wrong, and they will, you don't collapse because you've built habits that don't depend on everything being perfect. When challenges hit, your routines carry you, your discipline carries you, your repetitions carry you. Consistency creates stability, and stability creates momentum. And momentum creates breakthroughs that no one else sees coming. So if you want an edge, not for a week, not for a month, but for the rest of your life, commit to consistency, not perfect execution, not dramatic change, just steady effort, done daily, especially on the days when it feels small, boring, and unimportant, because those are the days that matter the most. Those are the days that separate people who talk about their goals from people who hit them. And if you stay consistent long enough, everything you're working for stops being a possibility and starts becoming your reality. Notice how some people look at a problem and immediately panic while others lean in like they've just been handed a fascinating mystery. That difference isn't luck, talent, or some kind of supernatural genius. It's mindset specifically, the mindset that every problem is solvable if you frame it the right way. Most people get stuck, not because the problem is too big, but because they're asking the wrong questions, focusing on the wrong details, or assuming something that isn't actually true. When you start treating challenges like solvable puzzles instead of personal attacks from the universe, everything shifts. You stop feeling overwhelmed and start feeling engaged. Suddenly the chaos has shape, the uncertainty has direction, and what once felt impossible starts breaking down into steps you can handle. The truth is, almost every major breakthrough in life, business, or science starts with someone refusing to accept a problem at face value. They dig deeper, they reframe the situation, they ask, what's really going on here? Because every problem has layers. The surface is just noise, frustration, inconvenience, confusion. But beneath that is the structure. And beneath the structure is the root cause. And if you can identify the root cause, you can fix almost anything. That's how great problem solvers think. They don't rush, they don't guess, they analyze, they observe, they dismantle the problem into smaller pieces and examine those pieces until the path forward becomes obvious. Most people make the mistake of thinking problem solving is about quick answers. It's not. It's about clarity. It's about defining the problem so precisely that the solution practically reveals itself. A lot of the suffering people experience in life happens because they're busy trying to solve the wrong issue. They're reacting to symptoms instead of causes. They're addressing consequences instead of sources. Imagine trying to stop a leak by mopping the floor every 5 minutes instead of fixing the pipe. That's how most people live, constantly dealing with the mess instead of the mechanism behind the mess. When you shift your thinking and start asking, why is this happening in the first place? Your entire life becomes easier. And here's the thing, treating everything as a solvable problem doesn't make you emotionless or robotic. It actually gives you more control. When something stressful happens, instead of letting panic take over, your mind automatically switches into analysis mode. That reduces fear, reduces overwhelm, reduces confusion. You become calmer, sharper, more grounded. You're not avoiding emotions. You're preventing those emotions from hijacking your ability to think. You become the kind of person others rely on when things go sideways, because while everyone else is reacting, you're reasoning. While everyone else is spinning, you're strategizing. Another powerful part of this mindset is understanding that you don't need to solve the whole problem at once. Big challenges often collapse when you break them into small, actionable pieces. You don't climb a mountain in one leap. You take one step, then another step, then another. And if the mountain feels too big, you don't shrink yourself, you shrink the problem. Define it more clearly. Break it down more precisely. Simplify the variables. The moment something becomes measurable, it becomes manageable. And the moment it becomes manageable, it becomes solvable. And sometimes the real magic happens when you step away from the problem for a moment. Let your subconscious work in the background. Let your brain breathe. Some of the best ideas appear when you're not forcing them during a walk, in the shower, while driving, while resting. Problem solving isn't always about grinding harder. Sometimes it's about thinking smarter, about giving your mind the time and space to connect dots you didn't even realize were related. But the most important part of this mindset is belief. The belief that every problem has a solution, that no matter how messy, confusing, or overwhelming something feels, there's a way to understand it, a way to approach it, a way to untangle it. When you carry that belief, you stop quitting too early, you push a little longer, you think a little deeper. And 9 times out of 10, that extra 5 minutes of persistence is where the breakthrough hides. When you start treating everything as a solvable problem, you become unstoppable. Obstacles turn into challenges. Challenges turn into strategies. Strategies turn into results. And suddenly, you're moving through life with a level of confidence that most people never experience, simply because you decided that no problem gets to beat you without a fight. You ever notice how the world never asks for your permission before it changes? One morning, everything feels familiar, predictable, almost comfortable. And then suddenly a shift happens. A trend flips. A new technology appears. A rule changes, a door closes, or a window opens somewhere you never expected. Most people panic in those moments. They freeze, resist, cling to what used to work, and hope the world will slow down for them. But the truth is, the world has never slowed down for anyone. It keeps evolving, and the people who thrive are the ones who evolve with it. Adaptability isn't just a skill, it's a survival mechanism. It's the quiet power that allows you to stay relevant, confident, and ahead, even when everything around you feels like it's spinning in a new direction. Adaptability starts with a mindset shift. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what does this make possible? That single refrain can transform anxiety into opportunity, because every change, even the ones that feel uncomfortable or disruptive, carries potential inside it. The problem is that potential is invisible to people who are too busy resisting. They're so focused on keeping things the same that they miss the openings right in front of them. But when you stay adaptable, you start seeing those openings faster. You learn to bend without breaking, to pivot without losing your foundation. You don't crumble under pressure, you adjust, refine, reposition, and move forward with clarity. The truth is, adaptability doesn't mean abandoning who you are. It means updating how you operate. Think of it like software. Your core system stays intact, but the features evolve to match the environment. You learn new skills, you drop outdated habits, you upgrade your perspective. You stop saying, but this is how I've always done it, because you understand that sentence is the beginning of decline. The world doesn't reward nostalgia, it rewards responsiveness. And when you stay responsive, you stay powerful. Adaptable people also make faster decisions, not because they know everything, but because they're not afraid of uncertainty. Instead of waiting for the perfect answer, they experiment, they test, they observe, they adjust. They don't treat mistakes as disasters, they treat them as data. That's why adaptability naturally builds confidence. When you've learned to navigate the unknown again and again, you stop being scared of it. You begin to trust your ability to land on your feet. And that trust becomes one of the strongest assets you'll ever have, no matter what field you're in. Another thing about adaptability keeps your mind young. People don't grow old when they hit a certain age. They grow old the moment they stop being open to new ideas, the moment they say, I already know enough. The moment they stop learning, stop exploring, stop challenging themselves. Adaptability forces you to stay mentally active. It pushes you to think in new ways, meet new people, explore new environments, and experiment with new approaches. It keeps your brain flexible, energized, alive. And adaptability affects your relationships too. When you're adaptable, you communicate better. You listen more than you assume. You're willing to understand instead of defend. You adjust your approach based on who's in front of you instead of insisting the world adjust to you. That makes you easier to work with, easier to talk to, easier to grow with. It doesn't mean you compromise your values. It means you know how to navigate human complexity without turning every interaction into a battle. That's a rare skill, and it changes everything. The most powerful thing adaptability gives you is freedom. When you know you can adjust to anything, the world stops feeling threatening. Opportunities expand. Risks shrink. You stop avoiding challenges and start welcoming them. You stop clinging to certainty and start trusting your ability to handle the uncertain. And once you reach that level of self-trust, life gets bigger, more interesting, and far more rewarding. Most people don't realize how easy it is to lose perspective until life forces them to stop and take a breath. We spend so much time chasing the next goal, the next number, the next upgrade, that we forget to look around and notice what actually matters. And the strange thing is, the harder you chase, the more everything blurs. You start running on autopilot. Days merge together. Achievements feel good for a moment, then evaporate. And before you know it, you're caught in this endless loop of striving without ever really living. That's why I learned sometimes the hard way that perspective isn't a luxury. It's a daily discipline. You have to work on it deliberately, otherwise the world quietly pulls you into its chaos. It's funny how success tricks you. When things start going your way, you feel invincible. You feel like you're supposed to keep pushing, keep building, keep climbing, because slowing down feels like falling behind. But here's the truth nobody tells you. When you lose perspective, you become blind. Blind to the people around you. Blind to your own well-being. Blind to the difference between what's meaningful and what's just noise. I've seen brilliant minds burn out, not because they weren't capable, but because they forgot why they started in the first place. They forgot to anchor themselves. The real power of perspective is that it brings clarity. It helps you see the world without distortion. It helps you recognize when you're fighting battles that aren't worth your energy. It reminds you that not everything deserves your stress, your fear, or your time. That one realization alone can save years of your life. And when you start practicing perspective every day, you notice something interesting. Life becomes lighter. Not easier, just lighter. The weight you've been carrying suddenly feels optional. You stop measuring yourself against others because you finally realize everyone running a different race on a different timeline with different obstacles. Perspective also changes the way you see success. In the beginning, success looks like numbers, milestones, applause. But when you step back, you understand the real success is the ability to live a life you don't need a break from. A life where you're proud of your choices, not just your results. A life where you can enjoy what you've built instead of constantly worrying about losing it. It's ironic when you stop obsessing, you perform better. When you stop gripping tightly, opportunities flow more freely. That's the quiet advantage perspective gives you. But here's the part people underestimate. Perspective isn't passive. It's something you actively practice. You remind yourself to zoom out. You remind yourself to ask, will this matter in 5 years? In 1 year? Next week? Most of the things that stress us out fail that test. They're temporary storms. But when you zoom in too close, they feel like earthquakes. Perspective gives you the emotional distance to respond intelligently instead of reacting impulsively. It puts space between you and your emotions so you can make choices you won't regret. And perspective doesn't only shape your inner world, it shapes your relationships too. The moment you realize people are more important than achievements, your priorities change. You start listening more. You start appreciating more. You start noticing the things you used to take for granted. A conversation with a friend, a quiet moment, a family dinner, these become sources of joy instead of background noise. And the crazy thing, these are the memories that stay with you longest, not the trophy moments, not the peak successes, the simple human moments. Life moves quickly, faster than any of us want to admit. And if you don't practice perspective, you wake up one day wondering where the years went and why you don't feel as fulfilled as you expected. But if you do practice it, if you make it a daily habit, you start to live with intention. You start to appreciate the journey instead of just chasing the destination. You start noticing beauty in places you used to overlook. You start valuing the present instead of postponing happiness for a future that's never guaranteed. And that shift changes everything.